What's going on, guys? PlayBox here, and we're back for another Dragon Ball Legends video. In this one, we are going to be going over a new guide, specifically a guide on how to build the best teams in Dragon Ball Legends. So, we are currently in the 4th anniversary of the game, and with this anniversary, of course, there are many new players. So I decided, why not make a team building guide? Because for those of you who haven't seen my previous guide I made actually a year ago during the 3rd anniversary, that video did pretty well, and I like to kind of update my guides after a year has passed. I think it's been almost a year since that guide has come out, so decided why not update this guide, because although the team building aspects of the game has not changed that much, there are still a couple changes, one of which is a big change that I'm going to keep going over in a bit. But I decided to, why not just update this, and hopefully it can help a lot of the new players joining in. So you know what, without further ado, let's hop in straight into the guide. So before actually building a team, it's important to actually know the fundamentals. So that involves knowing character tags as well as Z abilities. Now let's start off with the character tags. So let's take MUI Goku, the newest character to drop during the anniversary. Let's take him as an example. If you click on show details here, you'll see, if you scroll down, you'll see that every character has a section called character tag. And this is basically I guess you could say his attributes, or basically his tags, right? So he is a Saiyan, he's a Sun family member, and he is a God Key unit. So this also indicates what kind of team you can build this character around. You don't want to put these characters in teams that they don't belong into. For example, there are character tags like regeneration, powerful opponent, and see, Goku doesn't have those tags, so you don't want to put Goku on a team with characters that have the androids tag or the Sun family, it's not Sun, but regeneration tags. If the character tags don't match, you don't want to place them in the same team. Second is the Z ability. Now every character of course has a Z ability. This is probably going to be the biggest aspect whenever you're going to be building a team, because this is what this character specifically is providing as a buff to the other members of your team. So if we take a look here, Goku provides 2% strike arts damage inflicted by episode Universe Survival Saga, and he provides an additional 30% to God Key, Universe Survival Saga, and Saiyan strike and blast attack. So Goku is providing a 30% strike and blast attack to 3 tags: God Key, Universe Survival Saga, and Saiyans. So when you're building a team, when you're building a team around MUI Goku, you want to build a team that has God Key members, Universe Survival Saga members, or Saiyan members. Or it could be even all 3 of them, depending on the units, right? So that's pretty much the basics of how you want to build your teams. Now, Z abilities will vary from based on the number of limit breaks. So when you first start off, when you first unlock a character, usually it's 600 Z powers, but for Legends Limited nowadays, it's pretty much a standard to start off at 3 stars because you get 1200 Z powers. So at 3 stars, he has these Z ability 2, which you won't see here, but it will be basically a downgraded version of this one. So I think instead of 30%, it should be like around maybe 25%, something around that range. And then once you hit the 6-star limit break, so an extra copy, which is 2400 Z power, you'll hit the Z ability 3, which is basically this 30% strike attack and blast attack, right? This is pretty much the range of, this is pretty much the Z ability that you'll see on most units, because the next jump in Z ability occurs only at 7+ stars or 14 stars, which is 9999 Z power. Now if we take a look at that, his Z ability increases from 30 to 38%, which is a pretty big buff, and his 2% strike arts damage increases to 3%, which is not you might look at that and think it's not that big of a deal, but it's just straight up to strike arts damage, which is really good. Instead of base strike attack, which is we'll go over that in a bit. But also when you look at these ultra units, because there are rarities when you take into account units, right? There's heroes, extreme, sparking, and ultra units. When you take a look at ultra units, they actually have a significantly better Z ability. When you look here, Super Gogeta, which I was lucky enough to have at 14 stars or 7+ stars, his Z ability is 42% to strike attack and defense to Fusion Warriors and Saiyans, and then he gives an additional 5% to tag Super Saiyan special move damage. So he has a very, very good Z ability. And one additional thing that Ultra units have is an ultra ability. So if you want to pair your units alongside an ultra unit, you want to also take into account their ultra ability. So here you can see that if this character is a leader, we're going to be talking about the leader just in a bit, but if you take a look, if the character is in a leader, apply 30% damage inflicted and 30% ki recovery. So this unit, if you place him on the leader slot, he'll get an additional 30% damage inflicted, which is it's an insane amount. If the unit is not on the leader slot, you want to pair him up with Fusion Warrior battle members. So as you can see here, if the character is not on the leader slot, apply the following effects to self-protect: Fusion Warrior, Battle, or Support Member. Support Member basically means the units that you don't bring into battle. So you do bring 3 units into battle, which are your battle members, and the 3 units that you don't bring, the other 3 units you don't bring, are your support members. So Gogeta gets 5% to damage inflicted and 5% ki recovery based on your battle and support unit, and this pretty much goes up to 6 because you count 3 battle members and 3 support members, including himself. So you want to either run this guy on the Fusion Warriors team, or you want to be running him on any other team on the leader slot. So why don't we just go through and go into the leader slot, because that is going to be a pretty big, and this is pretty much the biggest change from my previous guide, because this was added a couple months after I made that guide. So let's hop in straight into the leader slot here. So as you can see here, we have a Universe Survival Saga team. By the way, the game has it so you can filter your character box by character tags and episodes. So if you can take a look here, you have all the character tags as that is currently available in the game. So you have Saiyans here, which is pretty much the biggest tag here. You have all the Saiyans unit. So it's really easy to filter out what character and what teams you want to build around. So this team is the Universe Survival Saga. So reset this, you go to episodes here, and you go episode Universal Survival Saga. So I built this team real quick, and you can see the first slot where Gogeta is called the leader slot. Now if you take a look here, and we go into his status, into episodes, we see that he is from sagas from the movie and not Universe Survival Saga. So that means you typically wouldn't be running this unit on this team because he doesn't belong to that episode, right? But the game has allowed us to basically place any unit you want into this leader slot, and that leader unit, if you decide to bring him into battle, he will be getting all the Zenkai abilities from every single member of the team, and he will provide his Z ability to every single member of the team as well. The only caveat here is that you have to bring in this unit into battle. If you don't bring this unit into battle, he will not buff the other members unless, of course, his Z ability buffs them. But if he doesn't have their character tags or Z ability, he will not buff the other teams, and vice versa. He will not receive the buffs. Well, it doesn't matter if he doesn't receive the buff because you're not going to be bringing him into battle. So make sure that whatever unit you put into the leader slot, you're going to bring him in like maybe 90% of your matches, because if you don't bring him, it's kind of a wasted Z ability, and you're gonna be pretty much losing out on buffs that could potentially, secure you the win in certain cases, right? So make sure you guys use units that you actually are going to bring into battle on the leader slot. The next thing I want to discuss about is basically what type of team you want to build, and this all depends on what kind of character types you're going to be building into your team and what kind of cards they hold. So the main 2 team variation that people would like to run are either strike variants or blast variants. But when your team doesn't have that many options, you just pretty much throw any unit you want, right? But the reason why this kind of divided is because some units, of course, are either range type, as you can see here, or from MUI Goku's perspective, he's a melee type. So if you take a look at his details again, you can see that every single unit has arts card held. What this basically is basically indicates what kind of cards you will bring into battle. It's better if I go into the character selection screen when you go into battle, because it will be easier to explain. Alright, so we're now in the character selection screen where you select your battle members to go into battle. So as you can see on the top here, there's 3 of the cards that you use in PvP, and there's a number next to it. So strike cards has 3, blast cards has 3, blue cards has 1, and green cards have 1. So basically what this means is these are basically kind of ratios of cards that you have in your deck, and it basically indicates the likelihood of you drawing cards. So we all know that when you're in battle, you have 4 cards at once, right? You can't have more than 4 cards, but you could have less than 4 cards, right? So this basically means that at a certain moment in time, you can only have 3 strike cards within your hand before you don't draw any strike cards. So basically, let's say you have a blast, strike, strike, and strike. If for whatever reason you keep using that 1 blast card you have, that means you will not draw another strike card until you use one of your 3 strike cards, because your limit is only 3. But when you select characters here, your number will change, because every unit, like I mentioned, holds strike cards. Gogeta holds 2 strike cards. This Ultra Goku, I believe, holds strike and blast card, and we saw before the MUI Goku holds a blast and a strike card. So what this means is, now that we selected these 3 units, our ratio of cards has kind of changed. So at this point, now we have 7 strike cards, meaning that you can always have 4 strike cards at all time, because that's the max. Theoretically speaking, if you're able to hold more than like 4 cards, let's say you're able to hold 10 cards, that means the limit of strike cards you can have in your hand would be 7 until you can't draw anymore. This is mainly more impactful based on the blue cards and green cards, because you only have 1 blue and 1 green. So whenever you have a unit that holds a blue or a green card, which there are a few units in the game that hold a blue card or a green card, for example, the Sparking Whis actually holds a green card, he will basically put an additional green card in your hand, so that number will become a 2, and that means that you will be able to hold at most 2 green cards in your hand until you stop drawing green cards. Currently, you can only hold 1 green card, but once you put that Whis that holds the green card, you can have 2 green cards before you stop drawing green cards. So that's something pretty important to keep note of, because when you're building your team, let's go back to the character party formation screen here. When you're building your team, it's important to know like what kind of cards and what kind of type your units are, because let's say a unit is heavily based on blast attack. He's a very blast oriented unit. For example, this God of Destruction Topo. What cards does he hold? He holds double blast. As you can see from his stats, his blast attack is significantly higher than his strike attack. So if you're pairing this Topo with units that are hyper focused on strike attack, like the Gogeta there, they're going to be putting more strike cards in your deck, which forces Topo to have to use more strike cards, which he's not a fan of, right? He doesn't do that much strike attack, so it wouldn't really mix well. Also, when you take a look at the Z ability, I think Topo is double attack, but some units, like we saw the Gogeta, they buff a specific attack and a specific defense, right? Gogeta buffs strike attack and defense, but not blast attack and defense. So the Z abilities also impact the way your damage output is held, because let's say once again that all your units buff strike attack and defense, and then you randomly place in Topo into the mix, the strike attack buffs aren't going to mean much to him, because his stats for strike attack are already low. So he's not going to be doing really good strike attack. And since there's no one buffing blast attack, he's not going to be doing very good blast attack either, because even though that's his main offense, there's no one to buff that stat for him. So he's not going to be doing that much blast attack, and he's just going to be dead weight at that point, right? So that's why it's mainly important to kind of focus on what kind of variant of team you want to build, either strike oriented or blast oriented. But when you have like super oppressive units like this Kaioken Goku, MUI Goku, their stats are kind of more on the balanced end, where you see here strike attack and blast attack are pretty similar. In that case, it doesn't really matter, because regardless of what card you're using, they're going to be still doing good damage. So always make sure to check what type your units are, what their stats are looking like, and what cards they're holding, and then build your team according to that. So next, I want to talk about equipments, because after forming your team, the second most important aspect of team building is going to be the equipments you use. Now, as you can see here, equipments are basically based off of rank. It goes from, I believe it's F rank. There's very few F ranks. E, D, C, B. It goes through all the alphabets until S, and then Z, and then finally Z plus, which is the highest rank. And it basically means that the stats on each slots are basically to their almost nearing their limits, right? Typically, I would advise people to run S rank equipments at least, because they're fairly easy to obtain. especially through the rerolling system. But if you're able to, I would recommend going for Z and put Z ranks at least, because if you have spare slot removers, getting them to Z rank is definitely good because of the stat increases, right? So that's one thing to keep note of. So when choosing your equipment, it's always important to take into account what kind of stats they buff. So for example, let's take a look at this. This one buffs strike attack, strike defense, blast defense, health, and strike attack. So this is a very, very good piece of equipment because it buffs the main offenses of the unit. For Ultra Gogeta, it is going to be strike attack, and it provides him with a lot of defense, in addition to giving him health. Health, by the way, is going to be one of the most important attributes you want to focus on. You don't want to hyper focus on health, but you want to still somewhat focus a bit on it. That's why for most of your teams, you want to at least have 1 HP buffer. For example, Universal Rival Saga is going to be the Bergamo. He buffs 18% to max base health, but I'll go a bit more into this when we actually go through and build a team. So back to equipments. You want to really focus on a unit's main offenses and then focus a bit on health. And then the third slot, you can focus either on all sorts of things. It could be ultimate damage, special move damage, defenses. It really depends up to you. I would really focus on what that unit is kind of trying to fulfill as a role. If it's a defense type, you want to make him more tankier. If it's an offense type or range blast type, you want to focus more on damage. So it's really important to keep note of what the role of the unit is within the team. Next is we're going to be going through what the difference is between base strike attack, so a base stat. So you can see here we have base key recovery and base strike defense, and then here we have something that doesn't say base, it just straight up says strike attack. So this is what is called basically as a pure buff compared to a base buff. Now it might be a bit confusing at first, but the key difference is between let's say this one that buffs base strike attack and this one that buffs just straight up blast attack, is that the base strike attack or the base stat focuses on increasing the base stat of a unit. So that involves like can I not click on this? Well, if we go back, that involves just typically increasing his stats right here. So these are his base stats. But when you take a look at the pure buff, so we go back here and we take a look at the 11% to pure strike attack when battle style melee type is a battle member, this multiplier is added on to his stats after soul boosting and after all these Z abilities and equipments are taken into account. So this is after, of course, all the Z ability buffs from all the units on the team is applied to the unit. Then that 11% is added on top of that. So the multiplier is added on top of that, which yields a bigger difference in whatever stat they're trying to increase. It's also important to note that these pure buffs require also some sort of higher base stats, right? So you can't just add pure buffs on top of stats that are kind of low. So you want to focus on maybe hyper buffing certain stats, which are Z abilities, and then on top of that buffing them with these pure buffs. You don't want to have like a bunch of Z ability buffs where you're buffing blast attack, your base blast attack, and then the equipments you use are buffing pure strike attack. That doesn't really work well. So try to focus a bit on your blast attack through your Z abilities. Maybe have one equipment focusing on those base stats for strike, base, strike, blast, or defense, and then have at least one or maybe two that buff the pure stat that you're buffing through the other equipments. So the way I like to have my equipment set up is at least having one pure stat buffer, one HP buffer, and then the other one is really random. You can have, for example, this one is a must run on UI Goku that increases his Vantage Gauge recovery, ultimate move damage, and special move damage, which is all stuff that UI Goku would love. And then I have this one that buffs his pure strike attack because he's a melee style battle member, and my Z abilities for my teams are mainly buffing strike attack. And then this platinum equipment, which further buffs the base strike attack, so that multiplier from the pure buff will be even better. And then more key recovery and special move damage. So it's important to hit all the nodes when using these equipments, because they'll definitely make a big difference when you're building your team. So the final thing I want to take a look at before we actually go ahead and build a team is going to be Zenkai abilities from Zenkai units. So basically a Zenkai unit is an older unit that receives some sort of buff in terms of a Zenkai. So that and they can go from Zenkai 1 to Zenkai 7. The biggest aspect of Zenkai units, other than of course being buffed to modern standards, not anymore obviously because a lot of the Zenkais nowadays suck, but the other biggest aspect other than the buff is that they have a new type of ability to buff teams, and it's called the Zenkai ability. So for example, if you take this purple Super Vegito, LF Super Vegito, who got a Zenkai buff, or sorry, a Zenkai awakening during Legends Festival, we can go to his ability, and there is a new category called Zenkai ability. This basically offers the following stat increases to characters that have both the element purple and the Saiyan tag. This doesn't mean that any purple unit can get this tag and this buff, and this doesn't mean that any Saiyan units can get this buff. They have to specifically be a Saiyan and a purple unit. But as you can see here, they're giving 40% to base strike attack, 35% to base blast attack, 40% to base strike defense, and 35% to base blast defense. That is an insane buff to whatever unit he's trying to buff. And in addition, the unit itself is getting the Zenkai ability. So Super Vegito himself fulfills the roles of being purple and a Saiyan. So that means he's going to be getting this increase in stats. Now, it's important to note that sometimes the units that have Zenkai buffs don't necessarily buff that team with their Z ability. For example, if you take a look at this Kale here, she buffs through her Z ability Universe... Oh wait, actually... Okay, yeah, she buffs through her Z ability Universe 6 and Girls. But if we take a look at her Zenkai ability, she only buffs rival universe that are red. So if you have a rival universe unit that's not a girl or a Universe 6, they might be getting the Zenkai ability, but they won't be getting the Z ability. So it kind of makes the setup a bit wonky. So you want to somewhat have it so that your Zenkai buffs at least provide a Z ability buff to the rest of your units, because that will be the best way to maximize the buffs provided to the team, right? So in this case, Super Vegito doesn't provide a Z ability buff to anyone on this team, but at least he's a Fusion Warrior battle member, so he'll be giving the buffs to everyone there. But let's see if I can find a better example here. Okay, so here, Namek Goku, the LF transforming Namek Goku. His Z ability is, if I can take a look here, his Z ability is 30% to Saiyans or Super Saiyan Strike and Blast Attack. Then his Zenkai ability is Blue Saiyans. So if we take a look at the team he's on, he Zenkai buffs the Ultra Gogeta, who fulfills the Blue and Saiyan tag requirement, and then he provides the Z ability buff to the rest of the team. So in this case, the Z ability and the Zenkai buff are pretty much optimized to provide the most out of his buffs. So that's how you want to kind of build your Zenkai buffs. And then of course you can make some gimmicky teams where you have one unit that's fully built out with Zenkai buffs. I think here one popular variant is Mono Purple, of course, where the main 3 units you're bringing are like Zenkai buffed by 4 of the bench units. That's also pretty, it can work out. But when you're building a team, it's always best to have a full color wheel if possible, because that way you have more than just 3 options to bring into battle. You'll have multiple different ways to counter your opponent, and it'll be harder for the opponent to kind of guess what unit you're bringing, right? So if you have the chance, definitely use Zenkai buffs in your team, but if it kind of messes up your team synergy, then I would advise you not to use them. All right, finally, let's just start and build a team. So let me just reset all this. We're gonna just build this God Key team that I have right now. So okay, we'll put this guy here as a placeholder. So let's reset this and let's go to God Key. Where is it? So God Key here. We have all the God Key members filtered out here. I forgot to mention this, but notice there's a number at the top right corner, and it's called the ability bonus. That basically indicates how much synergy your team has and how cohesive it is with all the buffs in the team. The higher that number is, the better it is for your team. So let's say we want to build a God Key team. First of all, we need to know what kind of units are actually good. Honestly, there's no way of telling just by straight up looking at this box here, but there are a couple of resources online that can provide you with tier lists and stuff like that can provide you a kind of an insight on whether or not a unit is good. I'll link a couple of tier lists in the description as well, so you guys can get an idea of what kind of units are good and not. And I'll be linking a couple of my tier lists to just give you more options, right? So let's try to build a God Key team with full color wheel. Let's start off with the blue color. So if you take a look here, I already know what units are good and not good. So if you take a look here, the best blue option here would probably be Beerus. But since I have Vegito at 14 stars, Vegito Blue, and he's going to be getting a Zenkai soon, might as well throw in Vegito Blue there as our main blue fighter. Now we take off Jiren. Okay, next, we need a green unit. There are a couple options here. Vados is good support, Zamasu is a good tank, but we want this Vegeta because he's absolutely good. He just got a Zenkai recently as well, a couple months ago, and he's actually very, very good, one of the best units in the game, so we're going to be putting Vegeta there. Next, let's go to red. We just got the new MUI Goku, who is a red unit, so we're definitely going to be putting him because he's easily a top 3 unit in the game, and he's the best red option for God Key. Next up, yellow. Now yellow, there are a couple options. You have Gogeta Blue, who's still decent. Super Saiyan Blue Evolved, who's good. But Evolved is more of a blast-oriented unit, and right now we have 3 strike-oriented units, so maybe we might not want him. And Champa also is a blast-oriented unit. Obviously, the main option is going to be Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku because he's easily one of the best units. You can argue he's the best unit in the game or a top 2 unit in the game. He's good. But he's an Ultra unit, so we want to take a look at his Ultra ability. So if we take a look at his Ultra ability here, there's a leader slot Ultra ability, and then there's the other Ultra ability where you get 5% to damage inflicted, 5% to key recovery per Universe Survival Saga battle member or support unit. We are building a God Key team, and they're not filled with Universe Survival Saga units. One of them, of course, is MUI Goku, but the rest are not. So the best way to utilize his Ultra ability is by putting him in the leader slot. So if we put him where Vegeta is, that way he'll get all the Z abilities, even though he'll already get them, but he'll get his Ultra ability to the max. So we're going to be putting him there. Finally, we need a purple unit. In this case, I think the best option would be to go with Goku and Vegeta. Very good units still. And he's probably going to be the best purple option on this team. So now we have 5 colors locked in. And they're all pretty much strike oriented. This Goku and Vegeta, it says that they are a melee type, yeah, but when you switch over to the Vegeta, he becomes a range type. So it's a bit I guess wonky there, but it's fine because their stats, I believe they're pretty even. Yeah, they're even in strike and blast attack, so it doesn't really matter. And this Kaioken Goku, despite being a range type, his strike and blast attack are pretty similar. So even though we're focusing a lot on strike attack, he's gonna be still doing a lot of strike attack. So that's fine as well. So we have all the colors got all there, ready to go. We have 1 spot left. Usually for my team builds, for my last spot, once I get the 5 colors down, the last spot I want to provide a HP buff. Now most main teams in the game, like your Saiyans, your hybrids, your movies, powerful opponent, all those teams, they have 1 specific HP buffer. For God Key, that specific HP buffer is going to be the Super Saiyan God Goku. So he's going to be the final unit that we put on the team, and just like that, we have a full color wheel with a really good team. Ability bonus before placing the equipment is 2400, which is really good. Usually around 3000 is like the perfect spot for you to have your ability bonus, but if you're like up or below by like 200 or something, it's not a big deal. So far this team's looking good. So let's add some equipments. Kaioken Goku, we're gonna put his platinum equip. He has access to 2 platinum equips, which is really good. And then we're gonna give him some pure blast attack because obviously we want some pure pure buffs to his stats, right? Next, we'll go to MUI Goku. We already talked about what kind of equips we want to put on him. So we'll put the platinum equipment, the pure equipment, and then the vanish equipment right here. And we're basically going to be doing this pretty much for all the units. So let me just do that real quick. Alright, so I finished putting equipments on my unit. So if you want to take a look, oh wait, I have to save this. Let's save this, confirm. So as you can see, these are the equips I've selected on the team, and we can see there that the ability bonus is now at 3,400, which is really good. You can actually get that number even higher with more Zenkai buffs. Like Mono Purple I mentioned before, they can go up to like 5,000 because they have like 4 Zenkai buffs, so the ability bonus will increase a lot. But 3,400 with only 1 Zenkai buff is really good. Like I mentioned, being around that 3,000 range is pretty much the sweet spot when you want a really good synergistic team. So that's gonna be our good Godki team, and you can just take this team into PvP and do pretty good with it. You can just straight up go to top 1k PvP easily with this team. So that's really good on that end here. So that's gonna be pretty much all the aspects of team building that I want to go through. If we want to go with a quick overview, it would be first focus on look at the character's tags and then Z abilities. Second, you want to look at what kind of cards each character on your team is holding and what kind of team you want to build, either strike or blast oriented. Next, you want to have good equipments on, focusing on a mixture of base stats and pure buffs to really maximize the damage output or whatever stat you're trying to increase. The leader slot, always make sure you're using a unit that you're comfortable bringing in most of your matches on the leader, because that's the only way to actually maximize the Z ability buff from the leader slot. And then finally, for the ability bonus, make sure it reaches around 3,000, because that's of course the good range there. If you're like below 2,000, I would say to probably redo your team. But I can understand that sometimes with lower star units, it might be kind of hard to get to that higher level of ability bonus. So at that point, if you have lower stars in your unit, then there's nothing really you can do. You'll just have to power up your units with Z power. So that's going to be pretty much all the aspects of team building. Hopefully you guys can find this guide helpful. So definitely let me know in the comments if you have any more questions or not. I'll be happy to answer them in the comments. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe, because that shit is so important, so don't forget. Other than that, have a great day. See ya.